In the last year, we have seen a considerable number of changes in the way we live, work, communicate, and socialize on a daily basis, to the extent of learning new skills. For some, it's even been DIY. In the world of work, what new skills will we need to survive? The World Economic Forum late last year published a report titled Future of Jobs Report 2020. In that report, they mentioned what the top 10 skills would be needed by the year 2025. These skills were categorized into problem solving, self-management, working with people, and technology use and development. In this week's episode, we take a deeper look into these skills and discuss. We even talk about, for us individually, did our job exist 10 years ago, and will it exist in 10 years' time? Stay tuned, and we look forward to discussing with you.
Take off, take flight with you. We never
P, why don't you kick us off? How you been since the last episode?
Boy. I have to go back to the
Actually,
original
by the way,
question.
P, because Pavilo, the last episode was a very, very special one, right? Episode 74 was our first take flight takeaway episode. So, how you been since then?
I'm actually trying to. I don't think much has happened since then. No, I don't think. I've been good. Maybe just. Actually, I'd probably just speak a little bit about the experience. It was a good experience. I think you guys are gonna enjoy talking into the camera and looking at yourself, providing that your topic is meaty, should I say? But it's not bad, and I think you're gonna enjoy it because I think everyone's got this. They want to have 10 minutes to themselves to try and express and convey an idea, right? So let's see. I'm interested to see what you guys have got to say. Who's next, by the way? We got.
I think we'll decide at the.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm good. Maybe so maybe we should just stick to the original question. I'm good.
And for the listeners, in case you've missed it, episode 74 was our first take flight takeaway segment where we have these small bite-sized episodes between 10 to 15 minutes where one of us takes the lead for that episode, runs it solo, and just talks a bit more about something that has been really impactful for us recently. So Pabilo did the first one, episode 74. So if you haven't checked that out already, make sure you do. It is a fantastic episode, and he set us up well for the future.
2,000 plus saves. I was like, wow. You know what I was thinking? Honestly, yeah. Jack Dorsey, I think, has received 2.9 million for his first tweet. That tweet's got to be worth at least a couple 100,000. What do you guys think?
You should make it into NFT.
Yeah, it's worth whatever. It's worth whatever. It's worth whatever someone's willing to pay for it. To be honest, Pete. So if you find someone who's willing to pump in a few hundred,
I don't know. I don't understand anything about NFT. Don't know what it is. But
maybe the thing is, I saw that same quote, and I think underneath it said, after quotation marks, it said Gary V.
Yeah. I think
someone's stolen it. I think now someone's credited
wow.
to Gary V.
Shots fired by Daniel, by the way.
No. That just speaks volumes of that's a praise to me. That's like compliment.
Daniel came locked and loaded.
I forgot to say, it said Gary V. This was 2017.
Sure.
This is awkward.
You know what's crazy? I think Gary V's probably even seen it as well. Trust me, it's cool.
I'm sure his lawyers have seen it as well. They'll be contacting you soon.
Especially if this NFT comes up. But Olu, how are you doing?
I'm well. I can't complain. What's new? This episode's coming out Friday? So yeah, by Friday I should have signed my new contract for a new role. So moving to a new role which is really interesting. Is around capital allocation. So looking at investments and how we spend money. So really excited about
a project role.
No, this is a full-time permanent role. I'm outside of the project life. I've been saved. But I'm good. I can't complain.
And Daniel, how are you doing? I'm very excited to get into this episode, by the way. But how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing well. Since last time, just relaxing, enjoy the long weekend, and looking forward, like Olu, to next week to get a trim.
Have you guys already booked your first trip to the barbers in the UK?
I'm not gonna lie. I'm not even gonna be rushing. That muscle memory needs to kick in for the barbers, so I'm not waiting.
I've sent a text message. My barber didn't respond, so
wow.
I need to check that he's okay, because you never know what could happen. But yeah, he didn't respond.
I think Olu, you should just accept it for what it was, face value, and just see that you're just a lack of priorities to your barber, and he's got other people top of the list.
That's okay. I'm not willing to pay that premium to be top of the list. Financial freedom. What about yourself, Shiva?
From
How
my
are you?
side, all good. I've been back in the UK for the last couple of weeks. Wanted to do a quick trip before the month of Ramadan starts, so I'll be spending that time in Sweden. But yeah, all good. I should be, by the time this episode comes out, I will be out of the UK. I'm going to be leaving in a couple of days. So yeah, all good.
You're the
So
only
should we
person
jump
I
into-
know. You're the only person I know that can freely just fly in and out whenever you want.
Yeah, Ollie, what's the definition of freely? Everything that I'm doing is within the boundaries. In case anyone is listening, everything that I'm doing is within all the rules and laws. I really recommend everyone to follow all the rules and regulations in place. Do not break them. They're there for a reason.
But I think
And,
to Ollie's point, and I agree with him. You're flying as if there is no restrictions or pandemic going on. Like you've been to UK like what 4 times in the last 2 months?
Yeah, that's true. But why I would say, for example, just to kind of highlight the friction in the travel right now. So for this trip, the flight itself cost £130, right? Before flying here, I had to take one COVID test in Sweden to prove that I'm negative. Then once landing, I had to pre-book in the UK 2 tests on day 2 and day 8 to prove also that I'm negative as well. So the flight ticket itself costs £130. Everything else around the journey, COVID related, so tests, all of those things, extra documents, cost an extra £300 on top. So yeah, it may seem like I'm traveling freely, but there's lots of tests that need to be taken. And
So I was
friction.
listening to the radio today, and a lot of people in the travel industry were getting frustrated about what you mentioned, because they're saying that traveling is now becoming for the wealthy, right? If you, like you mentioned, your ticket cost 120, 130, you had to pay more than that just to do the test, right?
Yeah.
How many people can actually afford it? We're in a privileged situation that we can afford it, right? But there's so many people that are not traveling during this period of time just because of the additional requirements and tests that you need to take, which you have to pay yourself. So certain airlines were complaining, like normally like the cheap airlines, right, where you get your tickets less than £100,
EasyJet and stuff,
EasyJet, etc. They said their business model doesn't work because people are not willing to pay 2 times that just to be able to travel. But thank God you're following the rules, like always. And I'm sure your family is happy that you're back and happy to see you.
Yes, they are happy and healthy. But looking to the future, I think we're talking about travel, but probably more importantly, skills and all of this stuff. So Daniel, why don't you help us think even further into the future about more important topics than just travel?
Yeah, sure. So what I wanted us to talk about was coming off of something I saw on LinkedIn back towards the end of the year, last year, 2020. And it was published and posted by the World Economic Forum. And it was highlighting the Futures Job Report that they publish every year. And I think this was their 4th annual report. And it was saying what their top 10 skills would be by 2025, or what they predicted the top 10 skills would be in a professional workplace by the year 2025. And they categorized it into 4 types of skills. The first being problem solving, second, self-management, working with people, and technology use and development. And with that, those 4 categories, they had like 10 skills. And just to go over them, they were analytical thinking and innovation, active learning and learning strategies, complex problem solving, critical thinking and analysis, creativity, originality and initiative, leadership and social influence, technology use, monitoring and control, technology design and programming, resilience, stress tolerance and flexibility, reasoning, problem solving and ideation. And I thought this was quite interesting given the year that we had in terms of the pandemic and how people's jobs had changed, skills and what companies were doing rapidly evolved. It'll be a good conversation to have about even the next 5 years, but even what our own jobs exist in 10 years time. And to help us think about that, did our jobs exist 10 years ago? Because it just makes you think of the last 10 years now and the next 10 years and how that evolves. And I want to go to P first, because P, you were shaking your head when I was reading those 4 kind of pillars of the types of skills. Why were you shaking your head?
Yeah, just quick, actually, a question, and
Because
I'll
you
answer it.
didn't see property management there. That's why.
No.
Or cash flow.
No, I don't manage. I don't manage property either. Daniel, I was gonna say, when was the article published? The year?
2020, last year.
2020
October
last year.
2020, I think.
October
right,
2020.
And these are the skills that will be required in 5 years' time. That's their prediction.
Yeah.
For me, when I heard you go through that list, it doesn't sound any different to when we were applying for our internships. What they wanted you to achieve there.
Exactly.
Critical
the only
thinking.
Difference,
the
only difference I noticed was the acceleration because of COVID. Like now they're talking about we need to move quicker because of COVID. But like you said,
but that's not a skill. That's a you're gone.
No, that's just the timeline. The timeline is shifting and is now coming sooner. But in my mind, I agree with you, P. I heard this when I was an intern, right? The same 100%. List was when you're on the graduate scheme, be flexible, be adaptable, all of these things were exactly the same thing I heard 5-10 years ago.
I think what's interesting about the article, just as a knee-jerk reaction, I don't think they know what skills are going to be needed in 2025, because that for me is maybe apart from 2 or 3 lines, those are the skills that have always been required. We're always expected to sort of model those skills at our job. So that's quite interesting. So that's my response to that question. My take on it's a good question. Was the job I'm doing now, or the job I've been doing in the last couple of years, was that around 10 years ago? Not sure, but what I feel 10 years from now, these positions won't be available. And the thing that comes to mind is a couple of things. Is one, most companies, if not all companies, are running at such a high efficiency that there is always room for them to innovate, use more technology, and that actually means less of the roles. I think there are, if you talk about the finance space, there are thousands of jobs that will be replaced by artificial intelligence because they can run the exact same models. What you need is people that can run AI, but you won't need the same size teams anymore. So just before I pass it around, I think the role that I'm doing now, it's a bit different because it's business strategy, it's project management. So maybe, but I think if I talk about the last 7 years of what I've mostly been doing in finance, the strategic business comes first.
Every project has an expiry date.
So no, that's true. I don't think so. And one thing I'll say is just plugging in a little bit of Simon Brown's work, is one of the statistics that he mentioned is that in a couple of years from now, 20% of our skill sets will be redundant. So it's 10 years from now, it will look totally different. That's my take.
Cool. So Olu, first question: did your role exist? Well, which one do you want to refer to? But did your role or your role you're moving into exist 10 years ago?
Let's talk about the role I'm in now. So yes, it's a traditional finance role. Existed 10 years ago for sure. Will it exist in the future? No. Right. We're looking at how to automate anything that's related to reporting, anything that is standardized or repeatable. You try to say, okay, how do we automate it and make it robotic, right? We've been hearing about robotics in the corporate space for years now, right? We've been looking at how do we purchase robots, bots is what they call them, and anything that someone's doing that's standardized, repeating it. So this is not a surprise to me. The only thing is I'm starting to see or feel an acceleration because of COVID. Companies are starting to realize, you know what, we thought we needed these employees more, but we were able to survive without them, quote unquote, or for them to be remote. So now what can we do to, one, we're seeing employees not being based where they're based, right? So now that we know you don't physically need to go to the office, why don't we move you to a low costing country? And then secondly is, if we can automate your work, why don't we, right? In my view, I think the key thing about this conversation is it's not new. Like, this is history, right? We've had the Industrial Revolution where steam engines were created. This was exactly what happened, right? People used the industry was completely different. Technology came in and changed it. and a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people had a lot of free time. What did that birth? Because with any change, it's going to birth something new. You've got to adapt. We've got to be flexible. So during the Industrial Revolution, it birthed cinemas, the entertainment space, art, music, those elements that you cannot sort of automate through technology. And I think this is going to be the same.
I want to add to that point. You mentioned, arts, hospitality, and entertainment. Those are the industries that have been immensely affected by the pandemic. And when you look at the report, and it goes by industry and it also goes by country. For anyone listening, if you really want to, it's 168 page, and that's just the key findings. That's not even an in-depth report. And when you look at the types of jobs that have been affected in the pandemic and the reduction, it's all in that category that you said. So entertainment, hospitality, and arts, they've all been affected negatively in terms of their jobs.
So that report says that, I would say in the last month or two, we've seen them have a new life, right? Now that we're moving to a digital space, those same industries, music and whatever, are starting to thrive on technology and digital. And I think it's going to be the case, right? With all this stuff going on about NFTs, and people can look about that, research about it. It's talking about the art industry, right? And how, yes, quote unquote, the traditional art, someone painting and selling it, now is moving to a digital space. So in my mind, it's guaranteed that whatever job we're going to do, if your job is repetitive, if it's mundane, if it's related to even specialists, because a lot of people think just because it's high intelligence work, they think that it can't be repeated or taken over. But a lot of AI, deep learning technology is able to quickly go to the internet, pull information that a human brain cannot store. So those sort of jobs will be replaced. So now the only way that you could really survive is, how do you start to be more creative? I think, Peter, so it's problem solving, but with a level of creativity, stuff that haven't been done today. How do you create something new? Now we're talking about developing, coding. So those are the jobs that are going to thrive in the future. Anything that's entertainment related, anything that's developing and creating. And the rest of us, I think in 5-10 years, our jobs are not going to be there, but hopefully we've done enough financial freedom stuff to not need that salary when we replaced it with other streams of income. Ain't that right, Pete? So that even if it's raining, you don't even feel the change in the weather, right?
episode 74. In case you want to know what Olu's talking about, just quickly before we go to Shuo or yourself, Daniel, I really have a problem with that list. The more and more now we're having a conversation, because how do you measure? If I'm a young person now looking to build a career, and I'm looking at what skill sets are required in a particular environment, and I read this list, it's almost, it's subject to the HR person at that time in the interview whether they think you've got good solving skills or not. So I just feel like there needs to be a different way to communicate and manage expectations. I think they should be.
But you can test problem solving skills by assessments. Okay, assessments may be outdated, but
and then when you get into your role, that assessment that you did, you never see that kind of assessment. Ever.
No, but the point. I understand what you mean, but the point of the assessment is to gauge how someone's mind thinks, the way you think. It's not that you got the right answers, but it's how did you derive or come to that conclusion, and that's what they're wanting to see.
And then that person is a terrible team player, and they don't get hired. So I think it's just.
Wow, you're speaking with conviction. Did you get hurt or something?
No. Because I'm not a problem solver like that. I'm a team player. That's why they hire me.
But I thought your Instagram bio says that you solve problems.
Yeah, in property, not for corporate. It's different. My mind's forced to different.
So your skills aren't transferable. Your skills aren't transferable.
No, they are. But I'm just it's a different kind of problem solving. But seriously though. Because there's this emphasis on analytical problem solving, and I guess it depends on an industry.
I feel like
because I'll be honest with you, if I go back to Porsche real quick, there was one guy that had all of this, and I asked, and she actually took the piss. She said to me, she actually said they were better candidates than you, and then they just weren't team fit. I said, all right, cool, innit? But this is expectations of. I just feel like the list for me, it doesn't help younger people on what they need to know.
I think P,
I
you
think it
looked at
does.
this list, yeah, and you realized that your skill set wasn't on this
No,
list.
no,
and you're
no,
taking it
no.
personal.
I'm not. That's nothing to do with it. I'm not.
No, but
Sure.
P,
I've I'm only 8 years in the game and I've got a decorated career. We can look at my CV, but that's
but P,
far from the point.
the teamwork.
Oh,
I'm
God.
not sure if that was
You
in the
gotta make
list.
sure that paint is dry. You sure?
I'm not
God,
sure if
God,
that was in the list, but I think there's also an emotional IQ element of it, which will be and I think that's what you're talking about, the emotional team player, those soft skills, which will also be part of
100%.
the
100%.
future for sure. I
But
think
then-
that is
but-
also
but-
The soft
question-
skills, real quick, and Shawal can attest to this. The soft skills keep you on an upward trajectory. 100%.
for sure.
Or maybe that's my way of making up because I ain't got the hard skills. But I think the soft skills are key. Go, sure.
But will the soft skills be key then? That's the problem. But sorry,
I
sure.
think they
Anyway.
would. No, I think they
Sure.
would.
Just 1 second before you start talking. Sure, have you been working out? When you lean
What?
back, I was like, yo, where
See,
did
he's
those
done it on
guns
purpose.
come
He's
from?
done it on purpose though. He's never done that before. He's done it on purpose now. You see, he's been doing it. And you know what I didn't want to do? I didn't want to mention it. I didn't want to mention it. I left him. Go.
By the way, I've been back home for 2 weeks. That's 2 weeks of home workouts. So for anyone listening who doesn't have access to the gym, I can send you my home workout. It's still possible. It's mind over matter. Daniel, sorry, the initial question before we talk about the emotional element.
No, I won't even get away from that kind of question. I think P and Ollie already said about did their role exist 10 years ago, and I think two people answered. So let's move away from that. But in terms of the soft skills and also the types of skills that the jobs report mentioned, which were problem solving, self-management, working with people, and technology use and development, what are your thoughts around those things, those skills or subcategories that P really does detest?
So to be honest, when I looked at the list initially, I was like, okay, I mean, this list makes a lot of sense, especially based on what we've seen. I think Olu and P gave a great reflection that when we came out of university, was the list very different? To me, I don't think creativity played as much of a part back then. And also the technology usage and the design aspect, I personally don't think that came on my radar anyway. And I think moving forward in the roles I've done in the past, especially financial roles, these are roles that we've already seen in our organization and other companies, that these are roles that will slowly be absorbed significantly, if not completely, in some areas. So I think that will continue. I think personally, the skills that will be the most important are how creative are you and how good are you at problem solving, I think. And then in terms of the types of roles, I'm reading a great book at the moment, which I think is really it's perfectly timed with the topic that we're talking about. And the guy in that book is basically saying that if you want to provide any value and try to build wealth, for example, in the future, in whichever industry that you're in, you need to try and be in a role that you're either making something or selling something. Now, making something could be something as like manufacturing a product or coding for a product or packaging for a product. And then the selling aspect can be marketing, sales, where there's more of these creative elements. And basically, you're saying whichever industry that you're in, as long as you can do one of those two, then you'll always have a role. Whereas if you're in a role that is essentially a supporting role, then these are roles that are more inclined to being completely automated in the future because there's not as much of creativity to that role and you have more of a risk for it to be automated, which I think what Olu was saying as well. So to go back to your question, and I think the biggest element is really this creativity and problem solving. And then if you're not in an area that's using those two, then you need to get your skills up, and I think transition into something where you can exercise those more.
Yeah.
Interesting. No, but I do agree with you, the three of you, when you say when we graduated and what employers or the industries we're looking at, there isn't a big change in this list. What I will say is, and Olu alluded to this, is the acceleration at which we're moving towards this has been hugely accelerated. This year, millions of individuals globally have lost their livelihoods and millions more at risk through the global recession. Structural changes to the economy and further automation has been a huge contributing factor. Additionally, the pandemic and the subsequent recession have impacted communities that are already at a disadvantage. So when we look at these lists of skills that will be highly that will be the top 10 skills, or forecast to be the top 10 skills by 2025, you have to think of the rate acceleration in which we're going in that direction. So this year, the report found that technology-driven job creation is still expected to outpace job destruction over the next 5 years. But the economic contraction is reducing the rate of growth in the jobs of tomorrow. So there is a renewed urgency to take in proactive measures to ease the transition of workers into more sustainable job opportunities. There is room for measured optimism in the data, but supporting workers will require global, regional, and national public-private collaboration at an unprecedented scale and speed. Of course, the word unprecedented we've heard hundreds of times in the last 13 months, but there's a renewed urgency to upskill and change the skills of current workers. And just going on to that, continuing that, 43% of businesses surveyed indicated that they are set to reduce their workforce due to technology integration, which we've all known for a number of time that technology is disrupting and replacing headcount, physical people doing those jobs. 41% plan to expand their use of contractors for task specialized work, so outsourcing their work and probably giving people some projects. And 34% plan to expand their workforce due to technology integration. So even though 34% want to expand their workforce due to technology integration, these 34% of individuals need to have key skills where they probably studied computer programming, know some sort of AI, know how to do some development work on an engineering front of the back-end developers. So that's key. And also by 2025, the time spent on current tasks at work by humans and machines will be equal. So a significant share of companies also expect to make changes to locations, as Olu mentioned, to their value chains and the size of their workforce due to factors beyond technology in the next 5 years. So there's going to be a rapid I would say even coming out of the pandemic now, and as we ease ourselves and the economies want to get stronger, it's not going to be back to how it was before. Companies want to, in some cases, give up their offices to reduce their leases, their rent, and allow the flexibility of remote working. And you have to be very disciplined to be working at home full time. Sorry, P or Ollie, did you have something to say?
No, I was just
Ollie,
going
go
to say, look, I've been working for the last sort of 6 months. I've been working on a project, and there's not that much I can do, or I won't disclose too much, but it's around finance. I've been working on a project. Yeah, okay. And the project is called Finance Transformation. So what does the future of the finance organization look like?
I think every company's doing that.
It's everything we're talking about, right? It's the reality. Now, we always articulate or voice the concerns and the notable reduction or restructuring element of it. But also you got to look at the fact that now people will start to work on value added work, right? I maybe you guys have felt this, but in my 8 years, there's been times where I've been in certain roles or doing certain jobs that I'm like, this is mundane. It's not using any of my brain cell. It's automated. It's killing me, right? And the reason why a lot of these activities are happening is because of most of the time is the lack of technology and adoption of technology, right? So where you want to get to is a place where those automated activities will be moved to technology. And now that frees me up to do what Shuwal talked about, where is creation. Like now let me focus on looking at the markets. Where are we going in the future? Where are some of the industries that we can start having added value conversations? Now, the problem we face there is just people have been programmed to think and work a certain way for years, right? So are they going to be able to change their thinking and working for the skill sets that are needed in the future? Unfortunately, there's going to be a population that's not going to be, right? And that's where it now becomes, I think, where we start to have a conversation, the responsibility of the government and whatever to ensure that those people can survive as these companies become more productive. But we're going there. There's nothing we can do about it. The only other thing I would say is really on this point is the expertise in companies are not that good to do the transition, because a lot of the technologies that we're talking about have existed for the last 5 years, right? But companies are struggling to accelerate it, right? And COVID is going to accelerate it. But the reason why companies have struggled to accelerate it is because of the fact that they don't have those skill sets within the industries, in the company, to actually transform them. So that's why you start to see a lot of them paying for consultants such as PwC, Deloitte, whatever, to actually come in and revamp their company to be more technology focused. So that's the only area where I think there is going to be a delay, is just because CFOs, execs don't even know how this looks like, because they haven't grown up in that sort of in the future mindset. So yeah, I think a lot of the old school industrial companies are going to still lag in terms of moving as quick as companies like Apple, Google, Amazon and stuff.
But I agree and disagree. I understand that some of them may not have the expertise or the knowledge in-house, but what they will use will be outside experts. So there are many different, emerging companies that are looking at cloud computing, AI, etc. So they will just use their resources, allow them to come in, consult, and give them recommendations. When I looked at the technologies likely to be adopted by 2025, the biggest part was cloud computing. Of course, cloud computing has been around for a while, but it's going to continue to evolve, and many people will be adopters of it. Big data analytics, encryption, and cybersecurity. Cybersecurity will be a huge and major thing. Right. There's artificial intelligence, machine learning and natural language processing. There's going to be augmented and virtual reality, which we see on our phones already. Blockchain is something that's evolving with the crypto space, and that's the technology it uses. 3D and 4D printing, 4D printing and modeling, and also biotechnology is going to be one, and quantum computing. We all don't have that knowledge. There will be people out there who are studying.
Daniel, I don't know.
Have that knowledge.
I'm an expert in quantum
3D printing, yes, as well. We've been talking about 3D printing for time.
How about 4D?
Not 4D yet.
3D is going to be old.
Just a point. Actually, couple of things. One, I would actually love for a list like a list of skills that you've mentioned that's come from this article, and future lists to be a bit more descriptive on what does it look like, because what happens is when you just list out the skill, problem solving, creative, what happens is, I'm just thinking about graduates that have now coming into the workforce. They provide their. Is it just go on?
No. So it's interesting to say that, because there was an image where it says transitions into the jobs of the future. So kind of what the jobs are, source job family at the moment. So it categorized them to like engineering, marketing, IT, human resources, sales, marketing and communication, down to finance, operations, support, education, administrative, etc. Then it links it over to the sections of cloud computing, engineering, people and culture, data and AI, product development, sales, content, marketing. And then just for you, project management. No, joking. Project management ain't there, but it links it into those kind of categories and how it's a transition, because it's not saying your job is going to change overnight, but your job and the role may transition to something else to make you still commercially attractive by the year 2025. And back to something the report was saying, it was saying that skills continue to be high and demand skills across jobs changing in the next 5 years, but top skills and skill groups which employees see as rising in prominence in the lead up to 2025, including groups as critical thinking, etc. But there's going to be a transition which may require at least 6 months of people to complete for them to transition into these new skills at a minimum.
So I got a question for the group, not to take over. Daniel, you gave us a brief understanding of what's on that list. First question is, in your opinion, guys, what do you think is not on that list and should be? And then I'll give you a second question after we've done that.
So I'll go first. In terms of that list, I think this list is for an employee. So it doesn't take into account you wanted to be an entrepreneur or creating a job for yourself. So that's very different, because you could say that the top 10 jobs of tomorrow could be content creation, YouTuber, XYZ, although you will still have to have elements of creativity.
Podcasters.
Yeah,
Podcasters.
but then you also have to have
episode 75.
but you also have to have an understanding of technology as well for you to be in those fields. But when you come back to these employees, I think they are of course they're very focused on these 10 skills, but I don't think we should discredit the soft skills that we were joking about earlier, because they are very key as well.
Yeah, for me, what's
So-
not on there, I'll kick it off.
Wait,
Go ahead,
wait.
Oliver.
You asked us the question. Why don't we just answer it? then?
Okay, because I was gonna just kick it off just to go.
So for me,
one or two that are not on that list.
one for me, the big one that's not on there, which actually talks to the role that I'm moving to, is capital allocation.
Oh my god,
It's
this
not.
guy
In
is-
it's not. In there. No. But on a
employers-
serious note,
All right.
on a serious note, that is a skill set that's needed in anything, right? Is opportunity cost. How are you going to spend your money? You're going to need someone looking at all these different technology projects and whatever, and deciding how they should spend that money. And that's not something that can be automated by a system or technology.
I can tell you're really excited about your new role. I was gonna say, for me, what I don't hear in that list, Oli
Is
went
it there?
deep. Like Oli went to the level of detail that they're
No,
not
no,
even.
but I thought that might also link to kind of critical thinking analysis, though.
Nah.
No. Mine is
Oli's
more.
point, you gotta say resource allocation, capital allocation. You have to be specific on that. For me, what's not on that list is leadership and communication.
I think it is there.
Leadership
Nah,
is on the list.
It's
Well,
leadership and social influence.
Okay, that's on there. Communication.
You could argue communication could come
Why
under
social-
social. Could
why
come
is
under
it
social
social
influence.
No, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna assume, because for me,
it's there because it's
communication-
working with
it's
people,
there.
because that's categorized under working with people. Communication is
Guys,
obviously
I
fundamental.
think we know P didn't read 169 pages.
but neither did you. Not 169. Come on, man.
and clearly Olu didn't read it because he said 169 when it's 168.
I was taking into consideration the
front
title,
page,
the header,
the front page.
Yeah.
It did take into that because that is included in the 168.
So Daniel and Shaw, what skills do you think were not on there that comes to mind? Because
I mean, Daniel's-
they're all hard skills, man. What happened to the soft? What happened to the
But
soft skills?
I think also
agree.
social
Soft.
influence. I think social influence. I think covers that kind of reading the room element, right? Because I don't know how you can socially influence a team or an organization if you can't connect with people. Maybe it's not spelled out, as you've said, P. Like maybe communication skills should be something that's spelled out. But then on the flip side, if you're a really good programmer or a really good engineer,
Why do you need that skill?
yeah, do you need to be a great communicator?
But
That's
it's not
what-
telling you
that's
that.
what-
I don't think
that's what could
this isn't telling
separate you
have
from
to
the
have
rest.
10.
Sorry, Daniel.
I don't think this is telling you need to have all. I don't think that you need to have all of them. I think
Yeah, just the top ones.
the top skills that you need to have to kind of be needed, to be wanted, to be attractive to an employer in 2025. And I asked you a question about, did your role exist 10 years ago? Some of you said yes, of course. Sure, the question that come to you. But even if we had been in our role 10 years ago and we had 10 years experience in the same role, the role existed 10 years ago, but the role has evolved over those 10 years. So even if we think the next 10 years, do we have the skills that the role would require in 10 years' time? Probably not, because unless we develop ourselves, unless we retrain, we upskill ourselves, we will be a dinosaur in a role that no longer exists, that we knew it. And someone who's fresher, someone who's more intelligent, has the necessary skills, will come
A
and
young
take that off our hands. Yeah, literally.
Yeah, but if 10
Literally.
years if 10 years from now we were doing the exact same roles we're doing today, we've probably got much bigger problems, to be honest.
Not necessarily, because if you've evolved and you've transformed your role, that's
Yeah.
a different story. That's a different story.
But do you know what's in?
Because
Do you know what's interesting about?
this? This is the next 5 years. 5.
Because now I'm thinking that a lot of these roles probably did exist. The content has changed. Anyways, the question I wanted to ask next was, what skills are you guys working on to make sure that you are at the front of your space or at the cutting edge of whatever area you're doing? 5 skills that you're working on. Who wants to go first?
Sure, you're first. You're first up.
Or not working on, do you think you will need yourself?
So maybe so the question, I'll try and answer the first one. And I think if you're working on it, then probably you think you need it or you need to improve on it. So
Okay.
I think for me, the one that I'm actively working on is to refine my written communication skill better and clearer. And I think this is also translating into speaking and presenting. And that's not to say that it's a weakness, but I think this is something that the more I look forward, if I can do this really well, then I think it will help everything else, I think. Because for me, essentially, if you can communicate something well, you're communicating it well because you understand it deeply. So if I can learn to communicate better, it means that it's forcing me to understand a topic even better as well. So I think for me, it's kind of that loop that I want to keep working on.
Cool. I'll go
Olu?
next. For me, I'll go next. For me,
Is it just the one though? Sure. That's all you got.
That's just
Yeah,
no. That's
let's
just the one
let's
that's just
just do
come to the
one
top of my
because-
head. Yeah, because otherwise,
Yeah.
The list is
for
long.
me,
Yeah.
I'll go back to that list. I'll go back to that list. No, I'm joking. Me personally, I think it's critical thinking and analysis. I was fortunate to be in a conversation a couple of weeks ago with some very important figures, and we're talking about something relating to something that the World Economic Forum had published around GDP and population growth by the year 2100, and also looking at who would be the biggest, biggest economy by that year, and it was quite frightening. But that said, it was a conversation around critical thinking and our ability to be able to think deeply and to change and adapt and to encourage and foster this as well. And that's something I think I lack, and it's something I would like to develop and foster more. Technology as well, the use, the adaptation, and really understanding technology. We all can use technology. We're all fortunate that we are savvy, but going down and double clicking on the technology, how does it originate? How was it sourced? What are the mechanics behind it? How does it work? We all can throw things into the cloud and we can access on different devices, but do we all know how cloud computing and storage works? Do we know what risk we put ourselves when we save things into the cloud, and what threats there could be from a cyber perspective? Probably not. It's not saying I want to be an expert in it, but I want to have a foundational knowledge and understanding so that I can make better informed decisions and be more in control of what I put and save and expose myself with the data.
Daniel, I had
And
On that, yeah.
go on, Shaw.
Sure. Go ahead.
So I had a very quick question, because I think the critical thinking thing, this is also something that I'm consciously trying to develop further. But I think, at least this is what I've told myself, this is something that I've seen develop a lot, especially in the last 12 to 24 months. And I think this is something that develops at a compounding rate the more experience we have on a subject. But this is just my view. Is that, so the question to you is, do you find that also the critical thinking is getting better the more experience you're getting, or is this something that you actively are working on, or how are you working on to get that to a level that you want?
I wouldn't say my critical thinking is bettering due to my experience. I think my critical thinking is improving by putting myself in conversations and having conversations with people that are better versed in a subject matter, people from a different background and experience to me, making myself uncomfortable in these conversations where I'm not the most knowledgeable in the room. That's where I can now see someone else's perspective and allow myself to be a better critical thinker. It's not about always being around those people with the same cloth, same experiences, same knowledge. That's not really going to help you. It's got to be very different, so you get a better rounded picture and understanding of different things. Because when you look at leaders, when you look at one of the best leaders, I would say, is Angela Merkel, Germany. She equips those closest to her to lead. When have you ever seen a great Angela Merkel speech or something that she's really in the public for? She equips those, empowers those around her to be great leaders themselves, and she's empowering essentially the next generation to be better leaders of tomorrow rather than everyone relying on her. And as an effective and great leader, You don't want people to come to you all the time. You want people to be empowered to make decisions that they know they can trust and essentially make the right decisions at the same time. How draining would it be for you to be leader, CEO of a company, everyone coming to you? You'll get no work done. None. Zilch. Might as well do a project role. Because, boy, you'll be stressed.
Well, on the that critical thinking one, I think is less about expertise and more about your logic and how you analyze data or think through problems. I think Pabilo, probably similar to you. I come from an audit background. And one of the key things they say to you whenever you go into an audit is how you critically thinking during that project. So that's basically how are you looking at data, analyzing it, making sure that you're rational, skeptical, unbiased, and how do you clearly sort of analyze the facts and form an opinion or a judgment based on it. So that's really from my audit days and my graduate days, all the time it was like one of the key skills you needed to have was critical thinking. Like, and the CFOs would be like critical thinking because you've got so much data, so much numbers, so much information. It's like how do you navigate through it and come up with a concise sort of judgment? Is so, and a lot of the times you have critical thinking is most of the times is in areas that you're not a quote unquote expert because but I think
you're giving auditors way too much respect.
Good auditors.
For me, yeah, you could say that.
So what skills do you guys work on?
So for my one, I think there's no. In fact, you go first. You go first, P, and I'll answer.
Yeah. So, hang on. Just one, right? Just one.
Just one.
Communication's been mentioned. Totally agree with that. I mean, a couple of things. Okay, I'll say a couple of things, but I'll say the one. There's leadership. I think is critical. I think marketing, whether it's yourself or the company that you are building or working for, or even marketing yourself within the company, I think is really important. I personally, one of the things that the skill I would like to master in 5 years' time, sounds a bit weird. Can you guys still hear me? Is the ability to close.
The ability to close.
And he paused deliberately.
What do you mean?
He wants to say, what does that mean?
The ability
he wants to be Harvey Specter. He wants to be a closer.
Close a deal.
Close a deal. Close the opportunity.
Harvey Specter.
Nothing is done until it's closed, right? So I just think all engagements, all opportunities, all deals, there's a skill required to get in over the line. It's almost a bit like finishing, the ability to finish. And I think the ability to finish shouldn't be overlooked. We're very good as humans at starting a number of things. We're not good at finishing. So It speaks to that element. And I think there's a skill, it's a muscle that if you can get good at finishing and closing, I think you will put yourself in a really, really good position wherever you are, professional, personal, inside, outside work.
I think PU is really the term about execution, right? Is everyone can have an idea, everyone can have a thought, but what separates you from the rest is who can execute that idea, who can finish it, right?
If they can get things done.
For me,
but it's not even. It's not even also. I even like the next part after that, right? So finishing,
executing.
No. But executing is the doing part, right? And I think executing is also key as well, the ability to do. But I think there's this seeing it over the line. Maybe we have to look at some personal examples. But I just sometimes maybe a quick example: the number of things that we would have started, activities, ventures, and we would have switched midway through. We started, we executed, but we stopped. We didn't
wouldn't
finish.
have executed because finishing is executing.
No.
The terminology execution is to finish it. Like if you execute a deal, if you execute a play, is you have to complete it. Is in the term. For me, I'll be quick. I'll give one, and then just to wrap up, I have one question. And it should be a quick one if you guys just give one. So my one
I'll execute that well.
Thank you.
I'll make sure I get that across the line and finish it. Yeah.
So for mine, the skill that I'm trying to build on is around technology literacy. So what that means is I've just seen in the future, everything is linked up with technology. If it's how do you make whatever you do more productive through the leveraging or using of technology, or how do you use technology to build an idea, create something? Everything is going to be connected with technology going forward. So as you increase your literacy in that, if it's understanding what a SaaS model is, understanding the data architecture, whatever it is, that is the space that I'm trying to get into and play, because I think you want to be able to, I found a sweet spot in my career where it's being able to talk the technology and understand the technology language, but then also able to talk the financial element as well. So
I'll
that's
tell you
why-
what, if you can master those two, you become very valuable. If you can master those two,
Master
you
what
become
two?
very valuable. Being
the
able
link
to
between the link
if-
of the
the link, it's like being a product owner, being able to speak to engineering in a language they can understand, but also understanding the technology they're using, but also be able to give them the financial aspect of what they're building or the
Yep.
downstream impact it's going to have. Because
For sure.
engineers don't necessarily have a financial background. They
Yeah,
just know
yeah.
they need to
No,
do something. A plus B
Yeah.
need to get to C.
Correct.
I'm going to build you, but they might not understand a particular financial instrument of what that means and how people use
Yep.
that, or
The
how
pricing
the
model,
users,
all of those
the
elements.
pricing model, or
correct.
forwards contract of the interest rate plus the spot rate. They won't understand that. It's like, okay, I need to add this calculation to this, and we give you the output. Take it.
Yeah, you know,
So-
actually, Olu, just in response to what you said before you asked your question, actually, and I would invite you to think about this. You mentioned about what you'd like to master, and you discussed it. I would actually invite you to think about getting to a point where you're able to build people up that can actually do that, right? And actually, I was
Build
thinking,
people
I was
up
actually
that can
thinking,
actually do that.
I was actually
do you mean?
thinking maybe that's actually a key skill, right? To be in a position to, in whatever capacity you are, hire and build people up. If you want to not only lead, but
Yeah.
build people up. So this is kind of, you was obviously
So
talking
what
about.
you're saying is the one that I'm working on, firstly. And then
Which one?
secondly, I totally agree with you, but you've got to be careful of not out. And I know you like to outsource. Yeah, you've missed outsource, but you got to be careful of outsourcing to a point where whoever you've outsourced does not respect your level of understanding or expertise in the space where you cannot lead. Because if you can't talk their language, if you don't understand the vision in maybe a technical architecture element, you can't truly lead them. You're just saying, hey, this is an idea. Like, they could do whatever they want and you never get a result and you're still paying them, right? You need to have that knowledge and expertise. But just to wrap, and just a question I had, just a quick question, because I think we've all mentioned what we are working on, but I would like to find from you guys, what do you think is the most important thing on this list? Because there's a lot of skills, and for the listeners and the people, what is the most important thing on this list that you should have? Your one most important one.
For us, or for you mean if I was
For
talking to a young person?
For anyone, for yourself, what do you think out of these skills, top 10 skills, is the number one most important one?
The ability to sell, and in every sense of the word, the ability to. Would you? Well, that's a problem in itself. That's a problem in itself. It should be on the list.
So for me is reasoning and the problem solving. So for me, it's problem solving.
Bro, you just said one, man. Come on, man. Stick to your own guy.
That is the one. Have you read this list?
Okay. I'm coming. I have.
It's the screenshot that it's the screenshot that Daniel
it's
said.
Easy. My eyes went straight to it. My eyes went straight to it.
My one is the problem solving.
My eyes went straight to it. It went straight to it.
KP, what's yours?
Let me just check for a second.
You said your eyes went straight to it.
Because you know what, I'm actually liking so I was gonna go with leadership and social influence, but I'm liking resilience, stress tolerance, and flexibility.
I like that as well.
I might go with. I think I'm gonna go with that one: resilience, stress tolerance, and flexibility. Because flexibility speaks to agile, and if you got resilience, yeah, you can last a long time.
Cool.
That was mine.
That was you, our Porsche.
Mine would be reasoning, problem solving, and ideation.
Daniel, man. Daniel
was my one. So three of us said the same. No, you can say the same one. That was
but I thought you went with complex problem solving. No?
There's complex.
No, he didn't go with reasoning.
No, I said reasoning, problems. Yeah.
By the way, for the listeners, what we'll do is by the time, once this episode is out, you probably see on our Instagram page. I assume, Daniel, the 10 list, this WEF list that you've put together.
Yeah.
Because then you can see exactly which ones we're talking about. You'll see them.
Yeah, but I would encourage all the listeners to, if to have a great look at the key findings of this report. It also does split it down by industry and country. Feel free to have a look at what the outlook could look like in the country you reside, or maybe you're thinking of moving to in the future, and what skills by this report think there will be quite advantageous to have, and also what industries will be evolving and what the space may look like in 5 years' time, and even in the next kind of 10, 15 years, as it's going to continuously evolve and rapidly change with the use and adoption of technology. But there you have it. That's episode 75 in the BAG. That's bag for those who can't spell. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope it's been interesting. We hope you've even thought about your own role, what it may look like in the next 5 years. And even, did your role exist in the last 5 or 10 years? And what skills you may need to stay relevant. But
And if you
have
ever
any
need to be
feedback for
saved,
us,
find a project.
but if you have any feedback for us, please do find us on Instagram at Take Flight Podcast, or you can email us at takeflightpodcast@gmail.com. Next week we'll have a Take Flight takeaway. So we're back with weekly episodes, which is going to be a bite-sized episode by one of us. So stay tuned for that, and I'm sure it'll be something that will empower, educate, encourage you, and hopefully inspire you as well. So stay well. God bless.
Take off, take